The day my daughter was born was supposed to be the greatest of my life, but it became a nightmare in a heartbeat. As I was lying in that hospital bed, exhausted but euphoric after bringing Ava into the world, my husband Ethan looked me dead in the eye and uttered the words that would shatter my reality. "She's not mine, and I want nothing to do with either of you." He turned and walked out of that room, never once looking back. 16 years have passed, and those words still ring in my ears. But now, as he stands on my doorstep, his face a mask of desperation and regret, I'm starting to think that karma has a very long and creative memory. But before we get into all that, I just want to pause and say thank you for being here and following along on this journey. If you're finding strength in these stories of resilience, I'd love it if you'd consider subscribing. It costs nothing, and it really helps us grow this supportive community. Now, let's get back to the story. That day in the hospital is seared into my memory like a permanent scar. The morning had started with so much hope. My water broke just as the sun was rising, and Ethan had rushed me to the hospital, his eyes filled with what I genuinely believed was pure excitement. For 12 long hours of labor, he was right there, holding my hand, murmuring words of encouragement. I was completely convinced that our perfect little family was about to begin. I had no idea those were the last moments of tenderness we would ever share. Ava was born at 7:43 p.m., her lusty cry announcing her arrival to the entire maternity ward. The nurses cleaned her up, swaddled her in a soft baby pink blanket, and laid her in my arms. She was absolute perfection, with a shock of dark hair, lips like a tiny rosebud, and little fingers that immediately wrapped around my own with a surprisingly firm grip. I looked up at Ethan, my heart overflowing, ready to share that moment of absolute bliss. But the man looking back at me was a stranger. His face had gone rigid, his posture distant. He was staring at our daughter as if she were some alien creature. The silence between us stretched out, becoming a vast, cold canyon with every second that ticked by. When he finally spoke, his voice was chillingly clinical, completely devoid of the warmth and love I had known for our entire 5-year marriage. "I've been looking at your phone," he said, each word precise and sharp. "I saw the messages between you and Samuel, Dr. Samuel Bennett, my professional mentor, a man old enough to be my father who had guided my career with unwavering professionalism and nothing more." Before I could even begin to wrap my head around the sheer insanity of his accusation, Ethan pressed on, each word a new shard of glass in my heart. "She's not mine, and I want nothing to do with either of you." He spun around on his heel, the sound of his expensive dress shoes squeaking on the sterile hospital floor. The sound of his footsteps echoed down the hall, fading away along with every trace of the life we had built together. The hours that followed were a chaotic blur of sobbing and raw disbelief. The nurses, picking up on the fact that something was horribly wrong, did their best to offer comfort. Dr. Catherine Miles, Ava's pediatrician, stayed long after her shift was over, just holding my hand and telling me over and over that I would be okay, that we would be okay. But nothing felt okay. My best friend, Olivia Chen, arrived like a force of nature, a whirlwind of protective energy. She had driven through half the night after Ethan stopped answering his phone. She just took one look at my tear-streaked face and understood instantly that my world had just been detonated. Without saying a word, she carefully climbed onto the hospital bed next to me, mindful of my stitches and IV lines, and just held me as I cried myself empty. That first night alone with Ava was a strange mix of terror and revelation. As the hospital grew quiet and the shadows lengthened, I just watched my daughter sleeping in her little clear bassinet. She was so tiny, so utterly innocent, with no idea that the man who was supposed to be her father had just disowned her. But with every tiny, rhythmic breath she took, something inside me began to harden. It wasn't bitterness, not yet. It was steel, a cold, hard resolve. In those quiet pre-dawn hours with the soft beeping of machines as a backdrop to Ava's newborn dreams, I made a silent vow to her and to myself. We weren't just going to survive this, we were going to thrive in spite of it. Ethan's cruelty wouldn't be our ruin, it would be the bedrock of our strength. By the time the morning sun streamed into the room, painting everything in soft shades of rose and gold, I had shed my last tear for Ethan Cole. My daughter deserved a warrior, not a victim, and a warrior was exactly who I was going to become for her. The discharge papers came with another sharp blow. Ethan had already sicked his lawyers on me. A thick manila envelope contained the divorce papers and a cashier's check that felt more like an insult than an act of charity. The note attached was brutally simple. For your initial expenses, do not contact me again. As Olivia was helping me pack our things, Dr. Miles came in for Ava's final checkup. Her kind eyes held a look that went beyond professional duty. She pulled me aside and spoke in a low, firm voice. Mrs. Rossi, I want you to know I documented everything from last night. Mr. Cole's behavior, his accusations, his abandonment. In my 30 years as a doctor, I've seen enough to know that medical records can sometimes become powerful evidence. Whatever you may need, now or in the future, you can call me. I thanked her, holding Ava just a little bit tighter. The warm, solid weight of my daughter in my arms was my anchor to this new reality, a reminder that while one part of my life had just ended with shocking brutality, another was just beginning. As Olivia pushed my wheelchair toward the hospital exit, I held my head high. The same doors Ethan had stormed out of just a day before were now opening onto our future, a future he had so carelessly thrown away. He had no idea that his moment of greatest cruelty had just laid the foundation for my greatest strength. In my arms, Ava stirred, her eyes opening to reveal pools of deep, innocent brown. She didn't need a father who could just walk away. She had me, and I would be more than enough. We rolled out into the bright morning sun, leaving the wreckage of one life behind and stepping into the vast unknown of a new one. The weight of Ethan's betrayal was still a physical pressure on my chest, but right alongside it, something else was beginning to grow. The very first seeds of a comeback that would take 16 years to fully blossom. The first year was a whirlwind of sleepless nights, caffeine, and a relentless grinding determination. Olivia had offered us her spare room, but I knew I needed to create our own sanctuary, a space for us to heal. I used the money from Ethan's generous check to rent a small one-bedroom apartment in a safe but modest neighborhood. The walls were paper thin, and the furniture was a hodgepodge from thrift stores, but it was ours. It was our fortress, the place where Ava and I would start over. Every single morning, I'd stand on our tiny balcony with Ava in her baby carrier, watching the sunrise as I sent out resumes. My old job at Cole Industries was obviously out of the question. Ethan's family had made sure of that, but Dr. Samuel Bennett, my mentor, turned out to be a true ally. "Chloe," he said during one of our coffee meetings, as Ava slept soundly in her stroller, "what they did to you was monstrous, but their short-sightedness will be their undoing." He passed a business card to me. "A friend of mine has a small advisory firm. They need someone with your skills. The pay won't be what you're used to at Cole, but it's a chance to get in on the ground floor." That job became my lifeline. While other new mothers were on maternity leave, I was juggling market analysis reports and client calls with feeding schedules and endless diaper changes. The firm's flexible policies meant I could work from home most of the time. My laptop was often balanced on the arm of a rocking chair while Ava gurgled happily in her bouncer next to my makeshift desk. Olivia was our guardian angel, constantly showing up with bags of groceries or staying to help with laundry while I was on a conference call. And Dr. Miles, true to her word, connected me with a local network of single mothers. These women became our tribe. We shared childcare, passed down baby clothes, and offered each other the silent, powerful understanding that comes from knowing you're not alone in the fight. Ava, my little girl, flourished. Maybe it was in spite of our circumstances, or maybe it was because of them. Her first word wasn't mama, but up, spoken with a fierce determination as she reached for a toy just out of her grasp. By her first birthday, she was toddling across our living room floor, her dark curls bouncing with every unsteady but determined step. She had my dark hair but Ethan's height, and she tackled every new milestone with a tenacity that made my heart ache with pride. The advisory firm grew, and my role grew with it. All those late nights spent poring over financial statements and strategic plans paid off. I earned promotions and eventually a partnership stake. When Ava was 3, we moved into a 2-bedroom condo in a neighborhood with a top-rated school district. As we were packing up the old apartment, I found the pay stub from Ethan's check, which I had never cashed. I had kept it as a reminder of where we started, but I realized we didn't need reminders of him anymore. Samuel became a grandfather figure to Ava, attending her preschool plays and teaching her how to play chess on Sunday afternoons. "She has your mind for strategy," he'd remark, watching her meticulously plot out her moves. When he finally retired, he passed his entire client roster on to me. "They trust you more than they trust me anyway," he'd said with a wink. By the time Ava turned 5, I had launched my own strategic management advisory, Rossi Associates. The irony was not lost on me. The woman Ethan Cole had cast aside as worthless was now a sought-after consultant, advising some of his company's biggest competitors. My new office had a clear view of the coal industries building, a towering glass monument that served as a daily reminder of how far we had come, and a motivator for how much further I intended to go. Ava was growing into an incredible child. Her teachers always remarked on her empathy and natural leadership. While the other kids drew stick-figure families holding hands, Ava would create intricate comic books about a superhero mother-daughter duo who could overcome any obstacle. At parent-teacher conferences, I would sometimes hear the other parents whispering about the single mom's kid, but their words didn't sting anymore. Success, I was learning, was its own shield. The quiet promise I had made to myself to prove Ethan wrong had morphed into something deeper. We weren't just surviving, we were building a life filled with purpose and joy. Ava's school projects won awards. Her debate team brought home trophies, and every one of her achievements felt like laying another stone in the foundation of our new life. One evening, we were having our traditional Friday night pizza on the balcony of our new condo when she asked about him for the very first time. "Mom, do some dads just leave?" Her question hung in the air, simple and heavy. I pulled her into a hug, breathing in the familiar scent of her shampoo. "Sometimes, sweetie, people make choices that they can't undo," I said, choosing my words carefully. "But those choices are about them, not about us." She nodded, her expression wise beyond her years. "Well," she declared, grabbing another slice of pizza, "I think he made a really dumb choice, because we're awesome." Later that night, after I tucked Ava into bed, I stood in our living room and looked at the vision board we had made together. It was covered with pictures of our dream vacation, Ava's academic goals, and my firm's growth targets. In the center, I'd written a quote, "The best revenge is to be unlike your enemy." Just then, my phone buzzed with a new email. It was a meeting request from a potential new client, a member of the board of directors at Coal Industries. They were unhappy with the current leadership and were seeking confidential outside counsel. I set my phone down, a slow smile spreading across my face. The seeds I had planted so long ago were finally beginning to sprout. And as I drifted off to sleep, I almost felt a strange sense of gratitude. He had given us the push we needed to learn how to fly. The meeting with the Coal Industries board member was a game changer. We met for lunch at a discreet private club. Across the table, William Cole, Ethan's own father, unraveled the tapestry of lies that had defined my life for the past 16 years. "Catherine orchestrated the whole thing," he confessed, his aged hands shaking as he held his coffee cup. "She never approved of you, Chloe. She thought you weren't from the right kind of family. But it was more than just snobbery." He slid a heavy leather portfolio across the polished table. Its contents spilled out, a collection of secrets too heavy to be contained any longer. Inside was a collection of emails, bank records, and surveillance photos, all dating back to before Ava was even born. Catherine Cole, my former mother-in-law, had hired a private investigator to manufacture an affair between me and Samuel. The photos were doctored, the text messages fabricated, but the most damning piece of evidence was a medical report she had managed to bury, a report that detailed Ethan's own severe infertility. She knew, William continued, his voice thick with a shame that was 16 years too late. She knew there was a high probability Ethan couldn't have children. When you announced you were pregnant, she saw her opportunity. She could get rid of you and cover up what she considered our family's greatest weakness at the same time. The brutal irony of his words was a physical blow. The portfolio contained even more. It detailed Catherine's systematic campaign to ruin my reputation at Cole Industries, the whispers and rumors she had planted that ultimately led to my forced resignation. She had played on Ethan's deepest, most fragile insecurities, weaponizing his own self-doubt until he was completely convinced of her lies. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked, though a part of me already knew the answer. William's expression confirmed my suspicion. "The company is on the verge of collapse. Catherine's meddling didn't end with you. She has been manipulating Ethan's business decisions for years, pushing out anyone who questions her. And now—" He trailed off, pushing another document toward me. It was a financial statement showing Cole Industries in a catastrophic nosedive. That night, I spread all the evidence out on my home office floor. Each document was a piece of a twisted, malevolent puzzle. Olivia sat with me, her sharp gasps of disbelief cutting through the quiet as she read through the files. "That woman is a psychopath," she whispered, holding up an email where Catherine gloated to a confidant about successfully separating Ethan from his gold-digging wife and her bastard child. The truth was a corrosive acid burning through me, but it was also a spotlight, illuminating the path forward. I picked up my phone and dialed Dr. Miles's number. After all these years, she had kept her word. She had every detail of that night in the hospital meticulously documented, from Ethan's erratic behavior to the exact timing of his accusations. "I always had a feeling something wasn't right," Dr. Miles said after I explained what I had discovered. The way he switched so suddenly, it felt rehearsed. I kept copies of everything, including the blood samples from Ava's birth. Definitive proof of paternity, if you ever needed it. The pieces were falling into a perfect, terrible alignment. Samuel arrived the next morning, his face growing grimmer with each document he reviewed. "Chloe, this goes way beyond personal revenge," he said, his voice serious. "This is high-level corporate fraud. Catherine's actions haven't just harmed you and Ava. She has jeopardized the jobs and pensions of every single employee at Cole Industries. Over the next few weeks, I built my case with the precision of a surgeon. Every document was authenticated, every timestamp verified. The private investigation firm Catherine had hired when faced with the threat of legal action was more than willing to provide a sworn affidavit about the doctored evidence. Former executives, long since pushed out by Catherine, came forward with their own stories of her manipulation. Ava, now a perceptive young woman of 16, could feel the shift in our home's atmosphere. "Something big is happening, isn't it?" she asked one evening, curled up beside me on the sofa. "Something to do with him." I nodded, stroking her dark hair. "Yes, but it's more about his mother, your grandmother. She hurt a lot of people, including your father." "Did she make him leave us?" Her question was direct, with no trace of self-pity. "She gave him a reason to give in to his worst fears," I answered truthfully, but he was the one who chose to walk away. The final, devastating piece of the puzzle arrived when William delivered a package containing Catherine's private journals. She had documented everything, her obsession with the Cole legacy being tainted by my common blood, her discovery of Ethan's potential infertility, and her cold, calculated plan to excise me from the family. She thought no one would ever see these, William said, his voice choked with shame. She kept them like trophies of her victories. As I read through Catherine's own words, detailing how she had orchestrated every lie, every planted seed of doubt in Ethan's mind, a cold clarity washed over me. This was no longer just about me. This was about getting justice for every person whose life had been damaged by her poison. I assembled my team: Samuel, Dr. Miles, Olivia, and a top-tier legal team specializing in corporate malfeasance. Every piece of evidence was cataloged, every witness statement recorded. We constructed our case like a fortress, leaving no room for doubt. The truth was finally out, but the timing of its deployment would be everything. Catherine Cole still wielded immense power at the company, and Ethan was still under her thumb. We had to wait for the perfect moment to strike, a moment when the company's weakness and our strength would perfectly align. That moment, it turned out, was coming much faster than any of us had realized. As I was filing the last of the evidence into my safe, my phone lit up. It was a text from William. "Catherine is calling an emergency board meeting. Ethan is back from his trip. It's happening." The stage was set. 16 years of lies were about to be exposed, and I was going to be the one holding the match. While the storm of corporate drama was gathering, Ava was blossoming. At 16, she was tall and poised, a brilliant student whose academic prowess was matched only by her emotional depth. The years of open, honest conversations about her father's absence hadn't created a void in her. They had forged her into someone of remarkable substance and strength. Her latest victory was at the state-level debate championship, where her impassioned argument on corporate ethics and social responsibility not only won her first place, but also garnered attention from several Ivy League schools. As she stood on the stage accepting her trophy, her confident smile was a mirror of my own hard-won resilience, and my heart felt like it would burst. "Mom," she said later that evening, sitting on our kitchen counter, the gold medal glinting under the lights. I used Cole Industries as one of my main case studies. Her eyes held a flicker of defiance mixed with curiosity. I wanted to try and understand the company he chose over us. I watched her, seeing the incredible young woman she was becoming. "And what did you find out?" "Their ethics record is a disaster," she said, her voice filled with the passion she always had for her research. "But it's more than that. Their whole decision-making structure is broken. There's a complete disconnect between their leadership and any sense of moral responsibility. It's like the company is actively fighting against progress." Her insight was uncanny. Without knowing any of the details, Ava had diagnosed the very cancer that Catherine had cultivated at the core of Cole Industries. But Ava's world wasn't just about academics. As captain of the debate team, she was a respected and formidable leader, known for her sharp logic and her ability to champion her teammates. At her competitions, I'd sometimes see other parents whispering and pointing me out, the single mom. But now, their whispers were tinged with admiration, not pity. Our bond had only deepened over the years. Our Friday pizza nights had transformed from simple traditions into profound discussions about philosophy, politics, and the future. Her questions about her father became less about the personal pain and more about the psychology of his choice. "Do you think people can ever really, truly change?" she asked one night as we sat on the balcony, the city lights spread out below us like a fallen constellation. "I believe they can," I answered, thinking it over. "But real change has to come from the inside. You can't force it on someone." She nodded, her gaze fixed on the distant skyline. "I used to have these fantasies that he would show up one day," she confessed. "Not because I felt like I needed a dad, but because I just couldn't understand how someone could walk away from their own kid." The maturity in her voice was staggering. "Sometimes," I said, thinking of Catherine's web of deceit, "people make choices based on lies they believe about themselves and about other people." Ava turned to me. her eyes sharp with intuition. Like the lies someone told him about us? I shouldn't have been surprised. She had my analytical mind and had clearly pieced together more than I'd ever let on from overheard phone calls and my own careful silences. At school, Ava had become a fierce advocate for other kids from non-traditional families. She had transformed her own experience into a platform for helping others, even starting a peer support group for students dealing with family turmoil. "It's funny, Mom," she said over brunch one weekend. "Some of my friends feel sorry for me because I don't have a dad around. But they don't get it. I have something so much better. I have you. You taught me that real love is about staying, especially when it's hard." The long shadow of Ethan's abandonment had all but disappeared from our lives, replaced by the bright, warm glow of our shared successes and unwavering partnership. Ava's identity wasn't defined by his absence, but by her own powerful presence in the world, strong, compassionate, and fiercely intelligent. As I watched her practicing her valedictorian speech for her upcoming graduation, it struck me that our journey had created something truly beautiful out of the wreckage. Ava wasn't just surviving without a father. She was thriving because she knew her own worth was never determined by his choices. "Mom," she called out, pulling me from my thoughts, "do you think we should send an invitation to the Coles for graduation? Grandfather William has been sending those nice emails." The question hung in the air, heavy with all the things she didn't yet know. Before I could formulate an answer, my phone buzzed. It was William Cole calling me. The time for shielding Ava from the ugly truth was over. She was old enough, strong enough. She deserved to know everything before it all came crashing down. "Sweetheart," I said, silencing my phone, "we need to talk. There are some things you need to know about your grandmother, Catherine, and the real reason your father left us in that hospital." Ava sat up straighter, her posture radiating a calm strength she had earned over 16 years of facing life head-on. "I'm ready, Mom," she said. "Tell me everything." The truth was about to change our lives all over again, but this time we would face it together, stronger and more prepared than ever for the storm that was about to break. Before I could even begin to explain the labyrinth of lies to Ava, our doorbell rang. It wasn't a casual buzz, it was an urgent, insistent press that made us both jump. I pulled up the security feed on my phone and saw him, Ethan Cole. 16 years older, but undeniably him, standing on our doorstep with the slumped shoulders of a defeated man. Ava's sharp gasp beside me confirmed she recognized him too. "Is that—" "Yes," I said, my hand finding hers instinctively. "That's your father." She squared her shoulders, a gesture so much like my own that it made my heart ache. "Let him in," she said, her voice firm. "I want to hear what he has to say." When I opened the door, the man standing there was a ghost of the powerful, arrogant executive who had abandoned us. Ethan's expensive suit seemed to swallow his shrunken frame, and his face was pale and drawn. The ambition in his eyes had been replaced by a raw, desperate plea. "Chloe," he whispered, his voice raspy. Then his gaze fell on Ava, and his eyes filled with tears. "Ava, my God, you look just like your mother." Ava stood tall and unflinching beside me. "That's the best compliment anyone could ever give me," she replied, her tone cool but not unkind. We led him into the living room. His eyes darted around, taking in the markers of the successful life we had built without him. Ava's trophies and academic awards, photos from our travels, the sweeping city view from our penthouse windows. "I have cancer," he announced abruptly, his hands trembling. "Stage 4 lung. The doctors are giving me maybe 6 months." The silence that followed was heavy and charged. Ava's hand tightened on mine. "I'm not here asking for forgiveness," Ethan went on, his voice cracking. "I know I don't deserve it. I'm here because you both deserve to know the truth. About my mother. About that day. Everything." "We already know," Ava said quietly. "About Grandmother Catherine's lies. The doctored photos, all of it." Ethan's head snapped up, his eyes wide with shock. How? Your father, I explained. William came to me. He gave me everything. The fake evidence, the medical files about your infertility, her private journals. He just crumpled. Decades of pride and denial collapsed in on him at once. I was a coward, he admitted, his face in his hands. Mother showed me those pictures, told me you were having an affair with Samuel, and I believed her. It was easier to believe her than to face the terrifying possibility that I was the one who was broken, that I couldn't have a child. It was easier to run. Ava stepped forward, her sharp, analytical mind piecing everything together. Did you ever even wonder about me? Think about us. Every single day, he whispered. I followed you from a distance. Your debate wins, your academic awards. I saw it all. Mother kept a file on you both, though I now know it wasn't out of any sense of grandmotherly concern. When I finally found out what she'd really been doing, it broke me in a way the cancer never could. I watched my daughter process this, a storm of complex emotions crossing her face. She had inherited my ability to see the bigger picture. The company, she said suddenly. That's the real reason you're here, isn't it? This isn't just about making a deathbed confession. A flicker of something, maybe pride, crossed Ethan's weary face. You really are brilliant, just like her. Yes, the company is imploding. Mother's reckless decisions, her years of corruption, it's all coming to a head. I need your help to fix what she broke, before I die. And you think we're the ones who can help you? I asked, though I already knew the answer. He nodded. The board is finally ready to oust her, but they need irrefutable proof of her malfeasance. Proof I know you have. And he hesitated, his gaze falling on Ava. The company needs an heir. Someone with the Cole name, but without the corruption. Someone who can restore its integrity. Ava began to pace, the same way she did when she was dissecting a complex debate argument. So, let me get this straight. You abandoned us because you were too cowardly to face the truth, and now you want us to ride in and save your company and secure your legacy? Ethan flinched, the accuracy of her words hitting him like a physical blow. I know I have no right to ask you for anything. No, you don't, Ava agreed. Then she did something that surprised us both, but I'll do it. She paused, letting the words hang in the air. Not for you and not for the Cole legacy. I'll do it for the thousands of employees who will lose their jobs if Cole Industries goes under. I've read the reports. I know what's at stake for them. A single tear traced a path down Ethan's sallow cheek as he slowly shook his head in disbelief. I'll help, she continued, her voice gaining strength, but it will be on my terms, and my first term is this. You tell me everything. Every single detail of why you chose to believe a lie instead of trusting the woman you supposedly loved. She turned to look at me, seeking my approval. I gave a small, proud nod. She was handling this with more grace and strength than I could have ever imagined. Ethan looked between the two of us, perhaps finally seeing the unbreakable bond that had been forged in the fire of his absence. I'll tell you everything, he promised. And then, I'd like to tell you about my diagnosis, about what comes next. Ava sat back down, her posture regal and composed. Start talking, she commanded, sounding for all the world like the CEO she was about to become. We have a lot to cover before we make any final decisions. The stage was now set, and for the first time in 16 years, we were the ones directing the play. For the next 2 hours, Ethan unburdened himself, laying out the full extent of the rot within Cole Industries. His hands trembled as he pulled out document after document, spreading them across our coffee table. Each page was a testament to the decay his mother had fostered. The company is hemorrhaging money, he explained. Mother's choices were never just about personal grudges. They were a systematic campaign of destruction, all disguised as protecting the family legacy. Ava leaned in, her sharp eyes scanning the financial reports. "These environmental fines alone are enough to bankrupt the company," she observed, tapping a finger on a particularly damning report. "I cited some of these in my ethics paper, but I had no idea the negligence was this deep." "That's barely scratching the surface," Ethan said, producing another file. "This is the real bombshell." He handed it over, his hands shaking so violently he could barely hold it. "My complete fertility analysis. From before you were born, Ava, Mother buried it. She used it to manipulate me, but she was too arrogant to destroy the original." The report confirmed everything William had told us. Ethan had a severe condition that made the odds of him fathering a child naturally almost zero. Ava was, by every scientific measure, a 1 in a million miracle. "When Mother showed me those fake photos of you and Samuel," Ethan said, finally looking me in the eye, "she presented them alongside a fabricated medical opinion suggesting Ava couldn't possibly be mine. I was too weak, too afraid of my own inadequacy to even question it." Ava's face was a stoic mask, but I saw her hands clench in her lap. "So you chose to believe the absolute worst of Mom rather than confront your own insecurities?" Ethan's shoulders sagged. "Yes, it was the greatest failure of my life. And now," he gestured at the scattered papers, "it's all coming undone. Mother's paranoia extended to everyone. She's been systematically ruining anyone she perceived as a threat to her control." "The board meeting tomorrow," I interjected, bringing the conversation back to the present. "What's her endgame?" "It's her final move," Ethan explained. "She's trying to ram through a hostile merger that would effectively dissolve the company as we know it. She knows I'm dying. She's trying to liquidate everything and cash out before the full truth of her crimes comes to light." Ava stood up, pacing the room again, processing. "You don't just need our help to expose Grandmother," she said, turning to face him. "You need an heir. You need someone to take over that she can't control." Ethan nodded slowly. "The corporate bylaws state that a direct blood relative is required to maintain the controlling interest. Without one, the assets get divided amongst the board, and Mother controls most of them. But if Ava's paternity is proven, she becomes the sole legitimate heir to Cole Industries," I finished, the pieces clicking into place. "And with her research on ethical governance and her vision for the company," Ethan added, "she could rebuild it into something better than it ever was." Ava stopped pacing, her expression unreadable. "You abandoned me. You believed my mother was a liar. And now you want me to swoop in and save your precious company?" "No," Ethan said, his voice breaking. "I want to give you the power to save thousands of jobs, the power to transform a corrupt entity into a force for good. This isn't about my legacy, Ava. It's about giving you the chance to build your own." The irony was almost poetic. Catherine's entire scheme had been designed to prevent this exact outcome, my child inheriting the Cole empire. And now her own villainy had created the perfect conditions for it to happen. "The medical records proving your fertility issues," I said, thinking aloud, "combined with Dr. Miles's documentation from Ava's birth and all the evidence of Catherine's fraud, it's an airtight case." "It would be enough to legally establish Ava's claim," Ethan confirmed, "and with William willing to testify against Mother, the board will have no choice." Ava walked to the window, looking out at the sprawling city. "The company's annual social responsibility report is due in 2 months," she said, almost to herself. "With full access to their internal data, I could implement every single reform I proposed in my research paper." A faint smile touched Ethan's lips. "You already know the problems. You understand what needs to be done better than anyone on that board." "I need to think," Ava announced, turning back to us. "This is more than just exposing my grandmother or taking over a company. This is about choosing to carry a weight I never asked for." Ethan nodded, slowly getting to his feet with visible effort. The meeting is at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. I know it's not much time, but... He wavered slightly, and I recognized the profound fatigue in his face. Despite everything, seeing him this broken by his illness stirred a strange pity in me. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a flicker of understanding. "We will give you our answer in the morning," I said firmly. "You need to get some rest." As he walked toward the door, he turned back one last time. "Ava," he said softly, "no matter what you decide, I need you to know this. Walking away from you was the single greatest regret of my life. You grew into this incredible woman, and I had absolutely nothing to do with it. That's a truth I have to live with." After he was gone, Ava and I sat in silence, surrounded by the paper trail of corruption, cowardice, and the true cost of a legacy built on lies. "Mom," Ava finally said, her voice quiet but firm, "I think I know what we need to do." The resolve in her eyes told me that whatever she had decided, Catherine Cole's carefully constructed world was about to come crashing down. The boardroom at Cole Industries went dead silent when Ava and I walked in at 9:55 a.m. the next morning. Catherine Cole's face, typically a frozen mask of condescending superiority, flickered with shock at the sight of her granddaughter. William sat beside her, looking both nervous and relieved. Ethan was there, looking even more fragile than he had the night before. The other board members shifted in their plush leather chairs, a palpable tension in the air. "What is the meaning of this intrusion?" Catherine demanded, her perfectly manicured nails tapping on the polished mahogany table. "This is a closed board meeting." Ava stepped forward and placed a thick binder on the table with a solid thud. "Actually, grandmother, I have every right to be here. In fact, by the end of this meeting, I'll have more right to be here than you." On cue, Samuel entered behind us with our legal team, followed by Dr. Miles, who clutched a medical file that held the power to shatter Catherine's entire world. "I'd like to call this meeting to order," William announced, his voice surprisingly strong. "We have an urgent matter of leadership to discuss." Catherine let out a short, brittle laugh. "If this is about Ethan's paranoid delusions, this," Ava interrupted, her voice ringing with clarity and confidence, "is about 16 years of fraud, conspiracy, and corporate malfeasance. Would you prefer we review the evidence chronologically, or should we start with the most severe criminal offenses?" I watched, my heart swelling with pride, as my daughter systematically laid out the case we had built. She began with the medical records, proving Ethan's infertility, then presented Dr. Miles's meticulously documented notes from the night of her birth. "And here," Ava continued, sliding Catherine's own journals across the table, "we have your own handwritten plans to destroy my parents' marriage using falsified evidence. That alone is enough for criminal charges, but we're just getting started." The board members leaned forward, their faces a mixture of horror and fascination, as Ava unveiled the true extent of Catherine's corruption, the environmental violations she had covered up, the competitors she had sabotaged, the employees she had silenced and ruined. "You foolish little girl," Catherine finally spat, her composure cracking. "You have no idea what it takes to run an empire like this. Everything I did to protect this family's legacy." "Your legacy," Ava replied coolly, "is a trail of destruction, but mine will be one of renewal." She turned to address the stunned board members. "As the sole legitimate heir to Cole Industries, I am proposing an immediate and total restructuring of this company, beginning with the immediate removal of Catherine Cole from all positions of authority." The legal proceedings that followed were swift and decisive. Catherine's attempts to bluster and deny were crushed under the mountain of evidence. William's testimony about her decades of manipulation was particularly damning, especially when backed by sworn statements from the executives she had forced out, all in favor of removing Catherine Cole from the board and installing Ava Rossi Cole as heir apparent and interim CEO. William called the vote. One by one, hands went up around the table, some eager, some reluctant, but all of them in agreement. Catherine's face twisted into a mask of pure fury as she realized she was utterly defeated. "You can't do this to me," she hissed. "I built this company." "No," Ethan spoke up, his voice weak but unwavering. "Father built this company. You corrupted it. And now, Ava is going to save it." As security guards arrived to escort a sputtering Catherine from the building, she turned to me, her eyes filled with venom. "You planned this all along, didn't you? You trapped my son with your baby just to get your hands on this company." "That's enough," Ava cut in, her voice like steel. "You lost, grandmother. The truth won. Now leave with what little dignity you have left." The rest of the meeting was a blur of signatures and legal formalities. Ava was officially named the heir with immediate control of the board. Her very first act was to commission a full, transparent environmental audit and to establish a restitution fund for all the employees who'd been wrongfully terminated under Catherine's reign. As the boardroom slowly emptied, only Ethan remained, looking both utterly drained and profoundly relieved. "Ava," he said softly, "I know this doesn't change the past." "No, it doesn't," she agreed, "but we can change the future. And I'm going to need your help with the transition for as long as you're able. There's a lot of damage to undo." I watched them begin to talk, their conversation focused on the company's immediate needs, and I saw a flicker of the father-daughter relationship that could have been. The universe had a funny way of balancing the books. Catherine's vicious campaign to keep Ava away from her inheritance was the very thing that had ultimately handed it to her. Later that evening, as Ava and I shared a celebratory pizza at our favorite local spot, she looked at me thoughtfully. "You know, Mom, grandmother was right about one thing." I raised an eyebrow. "You did plan this from the beginning, just not in the way she thinks." "Oh? You planned for me to be strong. You planned for me to be resilient. You planned for me to know right from wrong and to have the courage to fight for it." She smiled, a real, genuine smile. "And now we get to use that strength to fix things." The media would have a frenzy with the story, the abandoned daughter returning to claim the corporate throne. But that wasn't the real story. The real story was the look of fierce purpose in my daughter's eyes as she sketched out her vision for the future on a napkin. Justice, it turned out, had finally been served, and it was a dish best served with a side of radical, positive change. 1 year after the boardroom showdown, Ava stood at the podium during the Rossi Coal Group's annual shareholders meeting. The auditorium was packed. Employees, investors, and reporters all listened intently to the young woman who had engineered one of the most remarkable corporate turnarounds in recent history. "A year ago," she began, her voice resonating with a calm authority, "this company was on the brink of moral and financial ruin. Today, I am proud to report that we have not only survived, we have been reborn." The screen behind her lit up with the year's accomplishments: a 40% reduction in the company's carbon footprint, the establishment of the Rossi Coal Foundation for Educational Equity, and industry-leading innovations in sustainable manufacturing. Ethan sat in the front row. He was visibly thinner, but his eyes were bright with a father's pride. The aggressive new treatments had bought him more time than anyone had expected, enough time to see his daughter's vision begin to take shape. William sat beside him, looking 10 years younger, finally at peace. Catherine had accepted a plea bargain that kept her out of prison, but permanently barred her from ever setting foot in a corporate boardroom again. "But our most significant achievement," Ava continued, her gaze sweeping across the crowd, "isn't measured on a balance sheet. It's measured in the lives we've been able to change." She gestured to the side of the stage where a group of former employees, all wrongfully fired by Catherine, now stood. These individuals have not only been rehired with back pay, but they are now the leaders of our new independent ethics and compliance division. I watched from the wings, a flood of memories washing over me. I remembered the terrified young mother I had been in that sterile hospital room 16 years ago. If someone had told me then that this would be our future, that my daughter would not only survive, but would go on to rebuild the very empire that had cast us out, I would have never believed it. After her speech, Ava officially launched the Rossi Cole Scholarship Fund, a multi-million-dollar endowment dedicated to supporting students from single-parent households. Every child deserves the chance to achieve their full potential, she announced, her eyes finding mine in the crowd, and every parent deserves the support to help them get there. The reception was held on the newly renovated rooftop of the company headquarters. The building, once a cold monument to corporate greed, now boasted solar panels, lush green spaces, and a subsidized childcare center for employees. "You've done more than I ever could have imagined," Ethan said to Ava as we stood for a quiet moment away from the throng. His voice was weaker now, the cancer slowly winning its battle. "I just wish I had been there to see you become the woman you are." Ava took his hand. Their relationship over the past year had been complex, a careful dance of regret and conditional forgiveness. "You're here now," she said simply, "and in a way, your mistakes helped forge who I am. The hardest lessons are often the most important." Later that night, Ava and I walked through the rooftop garden she had insisted on building. "I want to expand the foundation," she said, her mind always moving forward. "Not just scholarships. I want to build a network of comprehensive support for families who went through what we went through." "Your grandmother would despise it," I said with a smile, using Cole money to empower the very people she looked down on. "That's precisely why it's the perfect plan," Ava laughed. Then her expression grew serious. "You know, Mom, all those years ago, she was obsessed with protecting a legacy, but she never understood what a true legacy is. It's not about preserving the past in amber, it's about investing in a better future." The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the city. Below us, employees were tending to plots in the community garden, and the massive Rossi Cole Group logo on the building now shared its space with climbing ivy and solar arrays. "We've come full circle," I mused, thinking of the night she was born. "Not quite a circle," Ava corrected, pulling a folded document from her pocket, "more like an upward spiral." She handed it to me. It was a proposal to formally change the company's name to the Rossi Cole Group, a final definitive statement acknowledging both sides of her heritage and the strength she drew from each. "What do you think?" she asked, her eyes watching my face. I thought about the entire journey, the pain, the struggle, the fight, and the ultimate triumph, how every moment of despair had been a stepping stone to this incredible transformation. "I think it's perfect," I replied, my voice thick with emotion. "It honors where you came from, and it defines where you're going." As darkness fell over the city, I knew that our story was more than just one of revenge. The greatest victory wasn't in tearing down what had hurt us, but in building something better, stronger, and more compassionate in its place. And watching my daughter lead the way into a new era, I understood that some endings are never really the end. They're just beautiful new beginnings in disguise. End of story.